All right. All right. Good afternoon and welcome to this week's GEMA View virtual industry talk focused on social media and influencing, and blogging. These weekly virtual talks are sponsored by the Georgetown Entertainment and Media Alliance and the Colley Career Center. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to connect virtually with fellow Hoyas for this industry-specific discussion. I'm Justin Spence, Associate Director of Regional Alliances at Georgetown, and I'll be facilitating today's virtual talk. Before we get started, I'd like to share a few tips and reminders. As you can see, this event is being held via Zoom meeting, and each participant has been muted upon entry. Please keep yourself muted during the panel discussion to cut down on background noise and any disruptions. The panelists will take questions at the end of this discussion. Please send in your questions as you have them using the chat function on the Zoom control panel below. If you have any technical difficulties or other issues, please be sure to submit those concerns via the chat function on the control panel as well. Without any further ado, I'm pleased to turn things over to Raquel Braun.
Thank you, Justin, and thanks everyone for joining. I don't know if Justin mentioned it, but we're recording this, so for those who join us later on, if you have follow-up questions, we can always address those later. And like Justin said, throughout the talk, if you want to just pepper us with your questions in the chat function, I'll keep an eye on those and can kind of weave those in as Brooke and I have a chance to talk. So thanks again for joining. For those who don't know me, I'm Raquel Braun. I'm the co-director of GEMA out here in LA and founder of GEMA Law. Currently serve as the Vice President of Business Legal Affairs at Fox Sports, and have worked with GEMA and Georgetown to create these virtual alumni talks, mostly for students for the next 6 weeks, working with students as you guys kind of wade through these crazy times. But today we decided to open this one up a little bit more for both alumni and students, because over the last couple of weeks, we've heard a lot about student interest and alumni interest in social media, whether it's, really being curious about this world of influencers and what you're seeing on social media these days, and kind of how business works, factoring in the social media angle, but also students who are maybe looking at this as a time to take advantage, of an opportunity to, be creative, do something different. Maybe you've always wanted to start a blog. Maybe you've always wanted to get into photography or do something creative that you didn't think you'd be able to do, but kind of in this weird time where maybe it's the perfect opportunity to go ahead and do that. And so it seemed like the perfect time to have a conversation with Brooke, and I'm so excited to have Brooke here with us today. Brooke, I'll let you kind of give a little intro about yourself, kind of what you do, kind of what led you to Georgetown, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. So my name is Brooke Raybould, and I run the Instagram platform and blog called the Southernish Mama. And it didn't always start with that name, but that's what I rebranded it as. I've been running the platform now for about 4 years, and I have over 125,000 followers. I'm a stay-at-home mom, I guess, by day, but really I run this platform throughout the day while I'm with my kids, and I figured out how to make a business of it and grow it so that I can actually earn a pretty good income, I guess, when it comes to, as I compare myself to my business school colleagues, and I always wanted to measure up and, do great things after business school. When I started opening term, that was 2015, I had gotten married and I found out I was pregnant with my first little boy, and that was a shocker. I anticipated going to Georgetown, doing the entrepreneurship program, starting a business through the program that really embodied me, and really launching that business upon graduation. And then, surprise, I found out I was pregnant, and so my world just kind of got shifted. I was tempted to go the consulting route and do more of a corporate route, but I think more than ever, getting pregnant solidified that goal to have my own company. And that kind of adapted along the way. I also knew I wanted to be a mom. And I think I can compare that to our current day environment. As a mom, you're in the house all the time. You're with your kids, especially young kids. I have 3 kids now. And so I compare that to the COVID environment where all of us are stuck at home. And since I knew I was going to stay at home, I had to be creative with what I wanted to do with an entrepreneurial venture. So that's kind of when the blogging took off. And I started a blog with my girlfriend, and it had always been this idea on my mind, and it really suited my lifestyle. Again, I was able to be a mom, be at home, and start this creative venture. And then it really just grew. We can get into that later, how I grew it. But now I'd like to say that it's very successful, and I won't say how much I make, but I'll say that I'm proud of, the success that it's yielded.
Awesome. So I want to go way-ish back, to back when you were in college. So you went to USC, went to Marshall School of Business there, and your degree was in entrepreneurship. So this always seems to have kind of been in your future, some way, kind of starting your own business, starting a blog. So for the students that are on this call, would love to hear a little bit about kind of what drove you to the entrepreneurship program, both at USC and then kind of later at Georgetown, and advice or thoughts for students maybe interested in starting their own business, kind of what they should think about when they're in school, whether it's classes,
Sure.
activities, things that they should be doing to kind of beef up their entrepreneurial chops.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go back to my parents. My dad was an entrepreneur, real estate developer, built something from nothing. And so as a little girl, I saw him do that. And I want to say, I don't know, there's a debate with entrepreneurship. Are you born with it, or do you, does it grow in you over time? And I kind of think it's a little bit of both. But anyway, seeing my dad be an entrepreneur, I kind of had that fire in my belly. And I was always, the stories about people always, having ideas or wanting to execute on a vision. I think in my youth, I kind of had that. And then when I went to USC, I did business. To be honest, at the time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And again, I fell back to my dad. Again, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and what did he do, and how is he successful, and what am I good at? I think I took a marketing class because we had to specialize at USC in the Marshall School of Business. I took a marketing class, and I was just like, this isn't for me. And then they had the Lloyd Grief entrepreneurship program. And so I sat in, I interviewed to get in, and the program just spoke to me. So I don't know if you're a student, I guess, if you're in college, I think, those moments when a class, a professor, an assignment really speaks to you. And I think you have to listen to that and not say, oh, well, this isn't going to make me money, or this isn't going to, do X for me, or my parents didn't do this. But I think it was in that moment, that entrepreneurship program, those classes, I was like, this is what I want to do. But as life would have it, and I think a lot of Georgetown students can probably relate to this, it's tempting to go the corporate route, right? Because, there's surety, there's safety, there's earning potential, whether it's financial, just the prestige of it. I was just so drawn to those things too. And so coming off the Marshall School, within that program, I had started a company called Red 79 Clothing. At the time, there were no cute collegiate apparel companies. And I was like, we need more cute, apparel companies. So that's when I started Red 79, and I did all of that. But then I graduated. And at that point, it was like, okay, do I do the entrepreneurial route and take that risk at the age of 20? How old are you when you graduate? 22. Or do I go the corporate route? And do I build my resume? Do I get a little bit more safety? Do I get a little bit more earning potential? Because as an entrepreneur, I was making zero. So that's a big risk, especially out of college. And then, as I said to you, Raquel, it's like, well, what if that fails? Then what? And I think that's where students get, as an entrepreneur, when you're so young, they say it's the best time to take on that risk. It's also not the best time to take on the risk because there's so much that you have at stake in terms of building your resume. And so I think logically I looked at it and I'm like, I got to build that resume. And so that's when I went into commercial real estate. My dad was in real estate. I got a job at CBRE, which is a commercial real estate brokerage company. I worked in brokerage for 3 years, beat my head against the wall. And at that point I was like, I just can't. I had that entrepreneurial spirit, entrepreneurial bug, and there was something that just didn't sit right with me about making that corporation filthy rich. I was like, I have this dream and this vision. I want to make myself and like I said earlier, not even rich. I just want to see myself succeed on my own 2 feet and not be tied, to a certain level to this web where in so many ways that's so great for people. And now I actually look back on that and I think, thank goodness I did that. But I also am so glad that I listened to that voice inside of me that said, I'm going to quit this perfect job and I'm going to take a risk. But for me, it was a calculated risk because at that point I was going to go to business school, which was the perfect segue. And now there's those arguments too, like, oh, do you go to business school? Is that a waste of money? Like, for me, again, it's all about the calculated risk. So I was like, well, if I quit my job, if I get into a good school, I can run an idea through a business school program. On the end of that, hopefully I'll launch that program. But if for some reason I get scared again, I have an MBA on the end of that, and then I can go work for a corporation, I can make money, and then knowing me, I'll probably hit that point again, that point again where you're like, is this really what I want to do? And then I'll just go back and try again. So and then Georgetown for me, my husband had committed to a job in DC, and Georgetown, I mean, who doesn't have Georgetown on their radar? So it's just one of those schools that, he went to DC, I was applying, I said Georgetown, and then I actually got in on a scholarship. So it made the decision even easier. And we bought a little condo, I walked to class, and it was great. But I want to say, like, starting school with the idea of taking that entrepreneurial venture through, there were so many moments where I was tempted to go, and I'm not saying at all that these routes are bad. I think it's about picking a route that's good for you, right? And I kept saying entrepreneurship is what suited best for me, but it's hard when you're seeing your friends do consulting or your friends do, these big marketing jobs, and you're sitting here, especially as the girl who's, I'm pregnant and I'm like, I'm going to do my own thing. It was a hard time for me to look, at my peers and see what they were doing. And for me to feel like I had, like, not nothing, but, you work so hard and then you're like, I kind of, am I good? You don't want to give it up, because I'm like, I could do consulting. I could still do this. I could still do that. But I think my story and my journey just led me back to fundamentally what I wanted to do. And then it morphed, I guess, after graduation into the social media stuff. So that's a long answer.
It's a good one. And now I have more follow-up questions on that. So at Georgetown, like you said, there's so many different directions you can take, going to business school. And I know in some of these sessions that we've had so far with students over the last couple of weeks, the conversation about grad school and business school or law school or some sort of graduate program has come up a lot, especially given these kind of crazy times and, jobs aren't as readily available, or maybe the types of jobs people want aren't available. So what kind of skills did you get from going to B school that you didn't take a traditional route, which is, a lot of us don't. And I think times like this give people the opportunity to not have a traditional career. But
Sure.
what skills would you say you got from business school specifically that really helped as you kind of went on to start the Southernish Mama?
Well, I don't want to sound like superficial either, but I think having an MBA or any sort of graduate degree just puts you, nowadays it's a little bit different because of entrepreneurship, but automatically that title puts you ahead, because there are certain things in your life that you had to do to get there and to get that opportunity that maybe other people, couldn't have that opportunity or didn't put themselves in that position to have that opportunity. So I think that that's one of the bigger things, is just like the prestige of doing it. And like any other, and that's why employers look to those things, because they understand to get into that program, you had to have, had that certain level of dedication, that certain level, so all those things. And then I think just, being exposed to the classes and learning more about yourself, and about, again, going back to like what speaks to you. Some of us don't know what we want to do with our lives, and that's okay. But the more we put ourselves in opportunities to figure out what we want to do and what we're good at, that's, what the world needs more of, not people that get to the point when they're 80 and they go, shoot, I wish I would have, been exposed to that. And so I think it's just one more thing, business school, grad school, that places you in an opportunity that maybe other people aren't in, that you can go, you know what, this is what I'm good at, and that's what I need to capitalize on. And so I think back to the point that I made about listening to what classes really speak to you, and probably the people in this group, you're in this group because media speaks to you. For whatever reason, you have an interest in this. Nobody forced you to be here. So I think listening to those things, and if you weren't, if I wasn't at Georgetown, I wouldn't have understood that about myself. And I don't think, I think having that name behind who I am as an influencer, again, not to sound shallow, I think, again, people, they understand what you did to get there, and it's a different mindset than maybe, and not better or worse, compared to the other influencers that I'm competing against. Some are, they're moms and they have a different skill set. This is just my skill set, and I capitalize on the opportunities that I've given myself and that others have given me.
That's awesome. So one fun question before we kind of go on to more about the blog and your business. What's your couple favorite Georgetown memories?
Oh gosh, I have so many. Well, there's one moment in my class, one moment where one of the professors just said, like, cherish this time right now, because this is, again, it's a gift that you're here and you're going to look back. So just having that memory of recognizing that moment and knowing, like, being on campus, I think walking onto campus every day and being a part of that. I know it's not a specific moment. My husband and I were there, I was saying, because we're actually moving back. And sure enough, we went to our old condo. We walked the same route that I walked to get to classes every day. And just having that opportunity is something that people don't get. Unfortunately, right now with coronavirus, some of us don't get that opportunity. But if you wear a mask, I think you can walk on, that's what they instructed us at this point. If we had the mask on, you could walk onto campus. So I think just capitalizing on those moments. I mean, those, the late nights with all your peers. Now I'm a mom, and a lot of the time I'm at home, or, if you go on to a job, just the camaraderie that the students bring. And we did VCIC, venture capitalist investment competition, just those competitions and the things that you just have to take advantage of when you're there. And then so I got pregnant with Rhett opening term. I had him at Georgetown University Hospital, my first son, in between my first and second year of business school. And then just bringing him onto campus was cool again, because it was kind of part of my story, and all the other, my colleagues knew him, and I don't know, it was kind of fun. So
You have a pretty amazing picture when you graduated with him.
oh, that's my favorite. Walking with my son was great. I was like, should I walk with him, or is that a little strange? And I was like, you know what? No, once again, I'm like, no, this is my story. Like he was a part of it. And so, yeah, it was a fun time.
So shifting gears to starting your business, and you mentioned it a little earlier, but I think it's really important to talk about kind of, it didn't start as the Southernish Mama. You started something else and it's evolved. And I think especially for the students, the recent grads who are thinking of starting something and they're not sure kind of what it'll look like in 5 or 10 years, I think that's okay. And
Yeah.
so kind of talk a little bit about where you started and kind of what pushed you to change things and kind of move directions, and how it's worked out and what you kind of learned through that process.
Sure. And I'll harp on this the whole time, but I think it goes back to, you know, nowadays with social media, you can do something that truly embodies you. And I think a lot of times people try to do things that they think will embody success, or they repeat something that somebody else has done, and they try to be successful as it. So I guess the biggest lesson I learned is, for me personally, because I'm a personal lifestyle mommy influencer, is to to be you and to choose something that embodies you, because it's like a good company. No one can repeat it if they can't fully embody it, right? Like no one's going to buy a fake whatever. They want the real thing. And so with social media now, just being the real authentic thing, I think is what has contributed to my success. But I want to say, I'm trying to think back. So when I got married, when I was engaged, there's all these blogging platforms, and right now it's so easy, right? We are just drawn to what we see and what's successful. At the time, Style Me Pretty was the biggest engagement, wedding planning. Did you use it, Raquel? A lot of the girls on here probably know. I'm trying to think of like the male equivalent of Style Me Pretty, maybe like, I don't know, a sports, I don't know. So I used it all the time. And at that point, I've always been pretty good at building websites. I'm just good at figuring that stuff out. And I assume the people here have a knack for that as well. So when I was engaged doing the wedding planning process, that's when I started my first blog, and it was a play on Style Me Pretty. Needless to say, I think it's really easy to get discouraged in the blogging world, the web, the internet world, the social media world, the TikTok world, whatever. Like it's super easy to get discouraged and be like, well, she's already doing it, so I can't do it. Or this person's already so big, or this market's so saturated. I feel like at every turn, I kind of did that. So I did like the mock Style Me Pretty. That didn't work out. I'm trying to think. I built it through Georgetown. I got second place in one of the startup classes with a Stork Box delivery company, where you would deliver a box to a mom through like each part of their kids' developmental milestones. And that pivoted in some way. So anyway, I was always had a pulse on building websites, Instagram handles. And I think if you're in any sort of, really in anything, you need to understand that aspect of business nowadays. If you're in brokerage, you probably need a social media account. I mean, there's certain places in life, but it's like you need to know how to market on LinkedIn. It's kind of similar, right? So we're all kind of touching that world in some way. But anyway, I started all these different websites and none really hit. And at the time I was in Georgetown, and I had my son, and a friend of mine, Daniel, he was like, you should start a mommy and me Instagram platform. And once again, we all have that moment, right? Where you're like, well, I could start an Instagram, can't I? Like, if she can do it, I can surely do it. So I started it, and then you realize, I'm sure everyone on here has probably done that, where you start an Instagram profile or a website, and then you just can't figure out how to make it work. And that's what happened to me a handful of times. But it was, again, one of those nagging thoughts on my mind where I was like, I can do this. Like, I've got to be able to figure this out. Like, it can't be that hard. So then I stopped that because nobody was following me. So who wants to be doing something when you have like 2 followers? I'm like, this is just the silliest thing. I'm putting out all these pictures. No one's reading what I have to say. I'm done. But then again, I still had this kind of idea that I could do it. And that's when my friend, I had graduated from Georgetown. At that point, I had had my son, and I had mentioned to you, Raquel, I knew I'd wanted to stay home with him just in the first few years. That's just what I decided. But I had the fire in my belly to do something that I could do. Well, he was at home that I could do. And nowadays, again, similar to coronavirus, there's so much we can do from our phones. There's so much, and now is more than ever is the opportunity to try. Because a lot of, like you were saying, a lot of the students, they don't have opportunities. So to try is the best, even if you start out with 0, because that's how I started. So anyway, she called me. I just found out I was pregnant with my second son. And she said, hey, I've been wanting to start a mom blog. And I said, awesome. I have been wanting to start one too. And having a partner kind of mitigates the risk, right? You're like, if I fail, at least somebody else is like failing with me, or at least we can talk on the phone about it and try to do it together. Maybe we have a little more horsepower or whatever. So I kind of built our blog. And then we had the Instagram platform. With Instagram, there are certain things that trend more than other things. And we understood that pregnancy, as I had mentioned, had trended. And so not that we were capitalizing on our pregnancies, but it's also a good talking point for women because, you want to talk about what's going on. Everything's changing. You have worries, you have, highs and lows. And so it's a great thing to be able to share. And I was pregnant and she was trying to get pregnant. She found out she was pregnant. So we kind of had these back-to-back pregnancies. So with Instagram, because it's a trending topic, and people want to see it, you tend to trend higher on the algorithm. And so with the back-to-back pregnancies, we grew to about 14,000 followers, just people interested in our story, right? Because people with social media, they want to follow, they want to follow a story or a trending topic. So we were able to grow. Once we had our kids, the growth slowed down. And I mentioned this in my bio, for an entrepreneur or anyone who's, success oriented, not having growth is just like a dagger to the heart, even if you have 14, because people be like, well, you have 14,000 followers. Isn't that good? But we are losing people by the day. And that's just not a good feeling because in my mind, I was like, well, we're just gonna, at that point we had made a little bit of money off of advertisements, and I'll talk about that later, but it wasn't anything of like substance. And so at that point I was like, what do we do? How do we grow this? And that's kind of when I said, if I can't we had a little bit of conflicting, things with our voices. And I think when you're creating an account, it really depends. But if you're an influencer, people want to hear from your authentic voice because they're following you. So when we had dual personalities, it kind of got lost in translation. So at that point, I had my second son and I wanted to, I couldn't lose the baby weight. So I had this other, again, entrepreneurial mind. I did this program that helped me lose weight. So I wanted to market that through our platform because, we're all at Georgetown, right? We're all trying to figure out how to make money and not, again, to get rich, but more just the success aspect of it. It's like, how do I figure this out? That's how my brain works. Like, how do I figure out how to grow this? How do I figure out how to monetize this? So at this point it was, well, if I can sell these programs through our existing platform of, 14,000 people, that's got to yield me some success. and maybe people will be interested in this. It'll change from more of an influencer blogger to a business profile. And there's a very distinct difference between, you know, a personality influencer and a business. But I figured at this point, this was the best way to monetize it. And we wrote an ebook, The Postpartum Slim Down, marketed this program, and it did okay. We didn't, you know, set the world on fire. And at that point, I was kind of like, we weren't growing. And so people, you know, they think, you look at these influencers and you're like, well, she just has 500,000 followers. But it's like, but that really was like maybe 8 years of her posting every day, or him posting every day, taking pictures every day. It really is a business, but you do have to figure out what trends. So anyway, my friend exited at that point because I think, you know, this, like we all do with social media, it's like you have the 0 follower thing and you're like, what am I doing? Like, this is just, I'm over it. So she was out. And then again, I kind of just kept doing it. It was like part of what I did every day. I just kept posting every day. I got pregnant with my third. And at that point, I thought it would take off again because trending topic, pregnancy, and I could share naturally, it'd be great. Like people would follow it. They didn't. And I was like, okay, what am I doing? This is just a waste of time. So at that point, someone had, you know, the letterboard thing. If people aren't familiar with my Instagram page, I'm the mom that holds the letterboard with cute quotes on it. And I write an insightful caption. And there's, you know, people think, oh, letterboard mom. There's really a lot of power and strategy and keywords and hashtags and business and all of that packed into that one little post I do on a daily basis. So I figured out at that point with the letterboards, I had one at my house. Some other girls had been doing them. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do a letterboard. I saw that. It was cute. You know, I'm just going to do it. I posted and the post kind of blew up. Not, you know, not like 1 million likes or anything, but higher than my average. So if you have a platform and if you notice a post gets higher than your average, I encourage you to look at it and to study it and to think about, you know, the analytics of why that post did better than something else. And so for me, I didn't understand that quite yet, but I knew that I had something with the letterboards, holding a letter. And if you guys don't know what a letterboard's it's like a felt board that you stick little letters on. And I put these cute little quotes that says, you know, I don't know, Raquel, I know you follow it. They're just silly mom quotes, not silly. They're actually funny, heartfelt. They, you know, they get to people, I think, you know, my audience, which is mothers, they like them. But what I later found out about the letterboards is that if you, on Instagram, if you know how to save an image, you know, you can save something, right? And you can share something with your friends. If the more people do that on your post, the higher you go up on the algorithm. So I don't know if I should get into like the nitty gritty of how this works, but I wondered why these letterboards, and if someone stays on your image for a longer period of time, you go up higher in the algorithm. So that's why sometimes people do, you know, videos, or if you have a little cliffhanger, or even if you have, you know, a carousel of images that people can swipe through. For me, I realized that the letterboards, people, even if they didn't like what I had to say, they were on my image for longer than average because they were reading what was on the letterboard. And if they liked it, they would save it. If they liked it even more, or with moms, you're like, oh, isn't this funny? I'm going to share it with my friend. And a lot of people don't read captions. So it's like if you have some sort of text in the image that someone can read, they're more apt to send that to someone that could see it, because let's say maybe 50% of people read captions, 50% don't, right? So that's what I figured out and capitalized on that. And I started posting a letterboard every single day. I would build them with my kids and we'd take a picture, and I just got better and better at figuring out, I like saying hack the system, but it's really, I just mastered what the algorithm is, you know, what trends on Instagram. And so a lot of people think, well, oh, she just does these little letterboard quotes, you know, little stay-at-home mommy. But I'm like, well, actually, there's a lot more behind the strategy. And so my growth went from, we were around, I think we had dropped down to 12,000, even 10,000. And over the course of now, it's been a year since I've been doing that, probably a year and a half, I've gotten to 125,000 followers. And then with your following growth and engagement, if people aren't engaging on your page, you're going to trend down. And the goal is to trend up. If people want to know how Instagram works, which people probably already know this, is that Instagram, you post a photo, Instagram sends it out to your most loyal web of followers first. If they engage on it, it goes out to the next net. And then if they engage on it more, it goes to the next net. How you grow is that net keeps getting bigger. So that's another social media strategy. So if you think about your most loyal audience and followers, and I know now, having done this for 4 years and really capitalized on it the last year and a half, I know what hits with that audience, and I know what keywords trend with that audience while remaining true to myself and what my motherhood topic. So it really is just an interesting thing that you do learn with time, how, and I want to say, like, I got lucky because I picked up the letterboard one day and I just was like, oh, I'll just do this. But then you unpack it and you're like, oh, this, and then with that growth, so how I monetize it now is through advertisements. Usually, I have a blog, which blogs, in my opinion, are a little bit of a dying breed, but that's just because my bread and butter is Instagram. There's going to be something new tomorrow. So I think, I watched a YouTube where it's like, you do need to diversify your social media presence. I only have so much time. I'm at the point where I'm like, I need to hire someone because I get so many emails and requests. And I also want to grow my platform so that when the day that Instagram turns into Facebook, that I'm not the one has no, juice left to continue to keep my audience. But sorry, I'm just rambling about a bunch of stuff now.
It's good because I think you touched on kind of the next set of topics that I think a lot of people are interested in. And it's funny when you said, I'm sure everybody knows this about Instagram and kind of how it works. I think a lot of them don't. And so for those who are interested, whether it's they want to start their own kind of business brand, or they're interested in going to work for a company and working in the social media space. I don't know if the students on here, but I heard we have students who literally had majors that they created at Georgetown in social media, which I didn't even think you could do. Right. But it's such an important space now, especially for businesses. Yeah. So I wanted to tap into more of the algorithm because you hear it a lot. People hear that it exists, but they don't really know what it is. You touched on it some. What else could you kind of explain to the group, kind of tips and tricks or things you've learned about the algorithm and what it actually kind of, how it silences certain voices, how it amplifies others?
I've got stories about that. The algorithm, it's hard because you want to take advantage of the algorithm, but you can't rely on it so much that it mutes your natural voice, right? Because then you're seen as, inauthentic, and you're just doing it. So I have a balance with my platform. I do it because, it embodies me, and I do it because it you know, it's I don't want to say a moneymaker because that's not it. It's like the growth and the success feeling of it, right? So with that, I you know, balance that. So I want it to embody me, but then I also have to monetize it because, you know, I stay home with my kids. I want to make it worth my while. Otherwise, I'm just posting into a black abyss and I might as well have 0 followers. So what do I want to say about the algorithm? I think you need to understand the algorithm to be successful on social media. Absolutely, 100%. I think that I got lucky, like I said, in doing something that made me figure it out after the fact. If you can figure out just little things, you don't need to understand the entire algorithm because you will never understand the entire algorithm. They're always changing it. They're always hiding likes, which happened to me. I don't see anyone's likes, which don't even get me started because I think that's, you know, I don't know how they could do that to certain people and not, because that's a competitive advantage. If I can look on Instagram and see other trending mom topics and how many likes they're getting, that puts me in a place of advantage because I know what's trending with other people, especially with macro influencers. There's different levels of influencers, but like if I look at a macro influencer, but you can't rely on it so much that it's your only source of ammo, right? But if you don't know it enough, you'll never be successful. The reason why my page grew was because, like I said, I hit certain topics that are trending. And so I think you need to understand if you're starting from square one, I'm not sure the demographic of this audience, but think of major things that you are attracted to. What do you like to follow? Like what captures your attention? And then always what can you speak to naturally? If you want to start something on your own, you can't start talking about, you know, for me, like I tried a beauty blogger, but it's like, I can't do beauty all the rest of my life. Some people can. So you've got to think broad. I don't know. I'm confusing this question, but like, you've got to think, what am I going to enjoy doing for a long period of time? Or what can I pivot from? For me, that was being myself as an influencer, because for as long as I am, I'll always be me. So I'll always be able to talk about me. And I just have to find topics that hit the algorithm. So I'm saying like, if I'm trying to think with like a male demographic, but everyone, you know, I can speak to women, engagements, weddings, babies, even school, jobs. You know, you got to find your niche just like anything else. And you become that niche expert. You know, people are doing it with politics now, as we all know. There's just those accounts that have blown up because they speak. Tim Ferriss, I think, has an article or someone where it's called super fans. You want to so with the algorithm, you want to make sure that you're hitting it so you get followers, but then you're getting those loyal people so that you can, I don't know what the word is, like monetize yourself off of them, because your most loyal followers will be there ultimately to make you money. But now I'm babbling. So back to the algorithm. So anyway, I don't know a lot about it. What I shared is basically what I know. Find topics that trend, find a way to make people stay on your image for longer. Use hashtags. Hashtags put you in searches that people are already, you know, if you're on Instagram, like I follow certain hashtags I didn't even know I followed, and then they just show up and you show up on people's pages. So you always want to use specific hashtags. I can't spend the video talking about what hashtags to use, but I think you can use a max of 20. You also want to tag strategic accounts. Like I think I blew up a lot because I would always tag, you know, like parenting magazine or parents magazine. And then again, you have to think of something that sets you apart. The reason why the letterboards hit home is for all the reasons I said. If I was just a picture of me dressed cute with a little kid next to me, or my children, how does that differentiate me from someone else? Like my sister asked me, she said, I want to start an Instagram and I want to do something. I like that you do the letterboards, and I explain the strategy behind it. And I encouraged her to do, something different, because now that can get saturated. But I said, you got to figure out how to keep someone on your image. So why don't you do, and she's a registered dietitian. She has a little girl. She's going to get pregnant again. And I'm like, perfect. You can talk about your nutrition stuff with your baby, and you could, our idea ended up being that she could do, I have a whiteboard in back of me, but she would do a cuter chalkboard version, at one of those stands, and she would write on it and have a picture. But anyway, things like that with the algorithm, because like I said, if people stay on your image longer, if you widen that net, you've got to engage your most loyal followers. That's why I say think very carefully when you're starting out on an Instagram page, because it does get a little bit hard to pivot. Like I'm a mommy influencer. If I pivoted to politics, I would lose my most loyal. You'd be like starting from square one. So you do almost have to like create a business plan for what you want to do with your page. And then how, just like any company, how you're going to differentiate it, read things, watch YouTube things on the algorithm, going back to them, I guess, muting certain voices. You have to follow certain guidelines within the Instagram community, within the YouTube community, within any, well, I guess not with websites. If you don't follow those guidelines, what can happen to your account is that it can get deleted. So you can work 5 years on a platform and you do something wrong, Instagram can just poof, you're gone. You've violated our policies too many times. And I think with me, which we haven't talked about really how I monetize it, but with advertisements, this was a big thing. I make a lot of my money through advertisements. So a PR agency will send me an email. I worked with Pampers the other day. I did an ad for them, FTC disclosure. You have to, and when I first started out, I'm like, I'm not going to put on there that it's an ad, because my followers, if you guys follow anybody and they do ads, you're like, I don't want to see this junk. You have to be so strategic as an influencer to pick, the ones that are paying well, what brands it is, because your followers, especially your loyal ones, you can't alienate them, but at the same time, you have to make money. And I didn't know that per FTC disclosure, legally, you have to put hashtag ad on your, thing, right? And then now Instagram, per their community guidelines, you have to do the branded content tool. So it's a special tool within Instagram that says at the top of your post that it's a branded content. You're working with Pampers, which I fully understand, right? The problem is a lot of this that's business, right? But a lot of this is very gray. So if you post an ad and Instagram finds out, they can do what's called a shadow ban on your account. It's happened to me, I think 3 times maybe. So a shadow ban limits your post exposure to just your immediate followers. So remember that net I talked about before? It won't grow beyond that net, if that makes sense. So you have to follow their rules or you can't play, essentially. I also got shadow banned, I think, for using, my girlfriend who I used to run the platform with had a picture of her son on there without a shirt on, and that got banned, and I got shadow banned. It got deleted from my page. It said, if you do this again, your page will be deleted, or not if you do it again, but if you can't follow our guidelines. Basically, we have the authorization to delete. And yeah, with the algorithm, that's why I said you can't figure it out. What's scary is that, and this is getting into politics, but Instagram can control certain voices, you know? And so you think about how that can, we hope that they're doing it from a place of good, right? We do. We hope they're doing it. Or we hope that they're doing it from the natural inclinations of what we're used to looking at. But there are tricks, and that's why I'm saying if you want to be good at it, if you want a voice to be heard, you have to understand the tricks of how to get heard. Unfortunately, for things like politics, and when you think about more vulnerable people looking at certain things, there are things that are going to trend more. And now what's going to Congress, I mean, not to get too over the top, and going to the Senate, are the fact that these, you know, online presences, Google, I don't know, Instagram, I don't know the exact ones, but they can dictate what is shown, and essentially there's not a paper trail for that. So I guess that's when you want to, that's why I think back to the algorithm, you can never ever rely on the fact that you've got it figured out, because they ultimately have, you know, they have control. And I think back to what I was saying about diversification. If I think about one of the things that keeps me up at night is that, yeah, it's that they change the algorithm and then you're out. And I think that for some people who has, you know, they've built but that's like with any company, you could make a wrong move and then you're out. So I think you want to understand the algorithm. You got to play by their rules. And the bigger you get, the more they're going to come down on you. Just like with anything in life, they're going to use you as an example. And so I'm lucky that I'm kind of at that stage where I'm considered, I think, a mid-tier influencer, which for marketing and monetization is actually like a good place for me to be, because a lot of brands want to work with me. But and I didn't mean to get into politics. I try to keep it neutral, but yeah, it is just interesting because they have, I guess my point is they have control over it. So you can only do so much. And the people respond to your page based off of, you know, what they see as popular. So if you're not popular anymore, that is maybe what they're voting, you know, your audience. And then you gotta figure out how to be popular and at what expense, you know. So it's just an interesting balance, I think.
Absolutely. And I know we started a few minutes late, so I'm gonna ask you one more kind of question that'll hopefully get us kind of to that 12:10 Pacific time. And I know we had somebody ask about the name of that legislation. I don't know if you know it, but if not, I will look it up.
Yeah.
And we'll send it around. So we'll get that to you.
Yeah. So I think that it's just, I know that it's been, you know, under investigation as to, you know, what, and like I said, I do not want to get into politics, but I think it's, you know, I think anyone could agree that we hope that there's an unbiased internal, it's fine when externally people using the platform are making decisions on what they think is popular and based off of engagement, how they look at it. You just hope that on the back end side that there's nothing going on to create any biases.
Voices.
Yeah, that would alter it in a way that maybe the people externally, the users wouldn't have, you know. So it's just, I don't know what it is, but I know they're working on it, as they should. You know, it should be you hope that it's a fair playing field, and sometimes it's not.
So last question for you. You've talked about brands. So quickly, you can get into kind of how you engage with the brands, kind of what they're looking for. Do they want you to post a post? Do they want you to, share more and do it in a story? Kind of, does it depend on the brand?
Sure.
Especially for those interested in kind of getting into that side of the business.
Yeah. So I think back to what I was saying about creating that loyal audience and a niche market. When you're working with brands, they will choose to advertise with you if you have more of a niche, right? Unless you have a ginormous following. Some of these macro influencers have 1 million followers, and then they can work with really whoever they want to hit or work with. But on my end, I'm a business account right now. And if you're going to go down this path, I heard that you should start as a personal account because there's less red tape from Instagram on a personal account. Once you become a business account, I think they start targeting you more because they know that you're using their platform to monetize it. I didn't know that. I just had a business account because I'm like, I'm going to be successful at this, so I'm going to be a business. But that's just something to research. I am a business account. Advertisers approach me. Again, my space is motherhood, babies, children. They approach me. Usually it's a PR agency. On my page, you can click contact. They'll go to my email. I have a blog. I have, my Instagram. The PR agency, say with Pampers, they'll email me and they'll say, we have a campaign going on with Pampers. Can you send me usually they say rates or your media kit? If you're an influencer, you have a basically PDF of all your stats. If you're a business account, you have the analytics on the backside. So with any posts that I do, with any story that I do, I think even personal accounts, you can see how many people viewed your story. But with the business account, it's a little bit more in depth. So per post, like Pampers would want to know maybe, on average, there's a website called Ninjalytics. You could actually go on to type in my account name and it'll give you my analytics. So a lot of people don't know about that. I use it sometimes to track my growth and whatnot. It can also sense if you're a bot. Agencies can usually tell if you're a bot, if you bot followers, which is, again, against Instagram's policy. That's the worst strategy ever nowadays. So don't buy followers because it dilutes your following. And again, when I said you get successful because those people engaged on your account, those loyal followers, your net won't grow because you'll just have a bunch of bots. So it's always a good idea to grow your account organically, in my opinion. I could be missing something, but I have a friend who bought followers. She said it worked for her, but now I've surpassed her and she's not growing. So, but anyway, back to the advertisers. They asked for the media kit. It has all my rates for what I do. A static feed and feed post, which is what you see when you're just scrolling through Instagram, a story. Sometimes I do packages. Sometimes I do giveaways is a big thing. And I charge them. You can, Google how much you charge per follower. I charge more because my engagement is higher. And so that's what's key about having loyal followers, engaged followers. If you're going to monetize this and work with brands, you want to have that engagement. Otherwise, they're not going to want to pay you as much. So because I have engagement, that high like ratio per like to follower ratio, brands will pay me more than maybe someone who has 500,000 followers, but gets like 1,000 likes, if that makes sense, because they know that my followers are loyal. So then they pick the package. Sometimes I'll negotiate like any business transaction, depending on timing, volume of work that I have to do, whatever. And then we'll sign a contract that'll have a timeline. And then they'll send me what's called a brief. Pampers will have a brief of the things that I need to hit in the advertisement, just like any, advertising deal. They want, the diaper prominently shown, the kids need to be wearing shorts, the packaging needs to look like that. I'll draft my, I don't know, usually I'll send them around. Sometimes I'll send them my final images if I get a really good shoot, or sometimes they'll ask for, a plethora of images so that they can go through, and then I'll pre-record my stories, based off of Pampers, what they want, certain images, certain angles. Clients are different. Some are like, oh yeah, whatever, like just put it up and it's good. Some are like, we have to see everything. We have to make sure everything is perfect. So anyway, so then I do get that approved and then I post. I make anywhere from, it really depends on the scope of work, but I do a story. I mean, it really depends, because for me, a story, if I can, depends always. Usually I won't do a story for less than $500. And that's just me with a product. Here's, blah, 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 at the point that I'm at, just because I don't want to dilute my brand and alienate my loyal followers pushing product on them. So there's that number that I need to hit to make sure that, you know, I'm making enough money to make it worth it and not dilute my following. And then per post, I don't know if people are interested in the numbers, but you know, I could make as much as, I don't know, $4,000, you know, for a post, or an IGTV I just did, or and the macro gals are making, and guys and people, I don't know what they're making, but they're making a lot of money. So it's good money, and for, you know, but for good reason, right? They're not just throwing money out at people that don't strategically have built this you know, network of people that, when I'm thinking about the work I put in to create an image and a post and a story, they're not only getting that, but they're getting my audience, which, you know, for me is 4 years of mothers following me who are loyal. So, and now you think of, are you on your phone or are you watching TV? Usually I'm on my phone with the TV on and I'm not even watching TV. So they know that their ad money is better spent usually on something when it comes to, you know, social media, because we're all on it. And for them, for advertising companies, it's a drop in the bucket to pay me, you know, $2,500 for a quick post than to do a whole production with, you know, a commercial with actors. And I mean, how much money is that? So that's the advertising side.
Thank you, Brooke. And yes, I think you're totally right. I saw a stat the other day that I think companies spent about $5 billion on influencers, influencer marketing in 2019, and they expect it to go to over $22 billion in 2024. Yeah. So that kind of just shows like where the projection is and the opportunity, especially for everybody that's on the call and listening in the future that's interested in the space. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you guys.
If there are any follow-up questions, you can email them to Justin, email them to me, and we can kind of figure out a way to run them by Brooke and get any follow-up questions answered. On the question that somebody had asked about the legislation, I looked up a couple articles. There's actually, it's a little older, but it looks like a really interesting Georgetown Law Journal article from about 1.5 years ago that talks about content moderation on social media. So we'll send that around and we'll try to find some other links for anybody that's interested in the topic, because I have a feeling it's going to be a very hot topic over the next couple of years, especially with the upcoming political cycle, or the political cycle we're currently in. So thank you again, Brooke. Thanks everybody for joining. For the students, be sure to join this Thursday. We have our third GEMA industry panel with some really interesting alumni in the business sales and sponsorship space. So thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.